Okay, so today I'm going to do another episode of Absolutist Philosophy. This won't be like an official episode. It'll be more like a mini episode where I just go through like random stuff, but like not with so much of a fixed topic. But what I was going to do before this one is I bought like this little $20 mic from Walmart that's supposed to be for iPhone because nothing else really seems to work with it. Any normal mic doesn't work with the iPhone, or you would need some sort of adapter for it and it doesn't really acknowledge it. Even like the Bluetooth headphone, it doesn't really work too well, or I can't tell sometimes. But so this one is like wireless, but you have to like plug something in, like a receiver, into it, and then the microphone itself is wireless. But then I just had them here as I was about to start, and I'll blame Elon Musk. He just cucked me because I'm using the Starlink Mini in the car, and then the microphone I'm putting on my lap because I'm waiting for that to update. I have to update it, or maybe I didn't have to, but whatever, whenever there's an update you feel like you should, and then I'm doing that and waiting, and then while I'm driving it falls onto the floor of the receiver, and then I can't find it now. It's kind of tiny, but whatever. So I can either find it later, or maybe I'll have to get another one, but I just wanted to test that in this session here, but I guess it just won't work. And so yeah, I've started to do these on YouTube, and so what's going to happen is it saves me time with uploading and editing, I guess, to some extent. Not that it's that big of a deal to do, but like I don't have to worry about that because now it'll be there as the live anyway. And again, even if the quality and all that isn't the greatest, although it seems to be okay, it won't matter because you obviously, there's no video anyway. You're just looking at the blank screen. So let's look at a few concepts here, like and it hasn't seemed to really crash when doing this, or if it does, it just compiles it as part of the same video. Like it hasn't crashed enough where it has like a second video saved, right, to show like, oh, you went live a second time, which I guess that happens on Twitch like an excruciating amount. But yeah, like let's just look at the base concept of society itself, like how nothing is ever qualified, right? It's like you're born into the world with all of your innate nature and tendencies and capabilities. And then there's a few things that happen that are quite disingenuous by society. First of all, there's the non-consensual social contract. You never get a chance to choose that. Like, oh, do you want to be a part of society or not? Not only do you not get that choice, you also don't get the choice later. And when you're old enough to think for yourself, especially in adolescent years, now all of a sudden everything is framed as defiance. Like, oh, you're against this. But wait a second. This is the first time you've been able to think for yourself and self-actualize. So not only is it not defiance, it's like you've indoctrinated them, you've controlled everything their whole life, and now that's held over their head rather than real. It shows you the lack of stimuli acme self-awareness that people have, that they're irresponsible stimuli acme preservers. Right, I've explained this in great detail, but basically when you have children, when you choose to have children, it's a big deal, and it should be taken seriously. And that would come along with the fact that you would never use that as an excuse for anything. You would never use that, again, like I just said, where you use that to validate the contrivance state. Like you say, oh, well, your parents raised you, so that makes everything they do right, or that makes the contrivance state that they're in right. They're perpetuating it. It's actually the opposite of that. You should vouch for it and validate for the state before you have children in the first place and require that. But instead, the opposite happens. People will have children, and then that'll give false meaning to it. To say that, oh, the false meaning of now, that's our meaning and validation, is the fact that, oh, we're doing it for our children, or whatever. So it's like an overcompensation, and of course they can't control themselves, hedonistic tendency. But no, there's no social contract, and then it's held over your head and sort of used the starved out argument, which just to assess the validity of a sound. How do I explain this? To assess the soundness of a process, right? What can you do? And you can look at the way that would it apply to anything. So you say you could have been born in World War II Germany, right? Just as a random example. And again, it doesn't have to be about government, but let society, government, similar constructs. And you would have accepted that because, oh, your parents would have been indoctrinated by it, influenced by it, And so you would have accepted that culture or any other one. It doesn't matter, right? So you realize, oh, if the basis is simply that your parents are always right or the society's always right and it's just you just go along with it, then that's exactly how you would explain human history. You're right. Be like everybody else in history, mindlessly accept it. Let the fact that, again, the fact that you were born and relied on your parents when you're 1 to 5 years old, and even beyond that to some extent, let that validate the specific contrivance state that you're in. And that leads to every society in history. Just so in other words, you'd go along with it no matter what it was, just because, right? There's no actual logic or reason behind it. So again, unqualified empirical authority that relies on that. So for example, the easy way to explain it is that, again, you're born, you didn't choose to be born, and assuming irresponsible stimuli acme preservers who don't vouch for the state, now they'll use that to reinforce it. Again, hold over your head and use the starve out effect, as I call it, that like, oh, we're going to threaten to starve you out if you don't agree with us. Oh, wow, what a great argument. That's like, again, what dictatorships could do. So the validation is, oh, you rely on us, therefore we're right. Or, oh, we'll starve you out if you don't agree. That's the form of the process. Does that sound logical to you? So you give birth to somebody, right? Society indoctrinates them, and then again, any objective contradiction or flaw of that process that could be observed by a person, because the mind is capable of objectivity, how would it be dismissed? Would it be addressed? Would it be answered? No, it would be threatened with, oh, well, if you defy our supposed false absolute, then we're going to starve you out. We're going to hold over your head that, oh, you rely on us. So that is anything but an argument, which is why it can be interchangeably applied to virtually anything. And then what else do you have? Like the framing of, basically convenience, like, oh, why does convenience and exposure, why does society exist in the current state that it's in? And it's mainly technology that defines it, not so much people or their preferences. In fact, it's the opposite, right? Your preferences are defined by technology. Like, what are the chances in the age of technology, like modern, that, oh, your hobbies happen to include the modern technology, video games, TV, whatever, that exists now. What if you're hundreds of years ago? It wouldn't include that. Why? Because, oh, it didn't exist. So, like, people like to take credit or think that they have their own choices and will, but you're kind of choosing between the predominant things of that era at that time that define your life. So technology is what defines it, not anything else. And then, so you're beholden to that, a lot of which is only necessary by overextension, as I say, like, oh, you have this technology, but you wouldn't even need it. You wouldn't even need it if there weren't so many people and it wasn't such an overextended state. Also, accountability of the stimuli acme. And then the final point is, like, this notion that somehow you need something from society, like, oh, you need, people did just fine without it. You could be a minimalist, you could be fine. So the problem with that is, not only would the individual not need something from society, what does it really need? It needs overcompensation adequate enough to, you would need overcompensation adequate enough to remove the need for, like, what is the fear? The individual doesn't care, right? Let's say they're indifferent, they're neutral, they could be a minimalist, right? They don't need society at all. It might be good for conveniences or something, or again, it could be made so inconvenient to live outside of it that it would be virtually impossible, but that doesn't validate anything about it. Right, like, oh, it's inconvenient to live in the woods and pick berries and do all that. Why? Because, oh, corporations own that land and this and that. So you could try to subvert that process, but think about it from the other side. Does that validate being a part of society, or does it show, oh, they just, make it inconvenient enough to do that, or to not be a part of it? So you're practically being forced to do it. And then getting back to the other point, like, does the individual need society and all these overcompensations and technology and stuff? Is like, you need overcompensations not to go against the unqualified, fallacious, contradictory, contrived structure, sure. So in other words, you need money or you need this or that. You don't really need it, but society needs from you, needs a lot from you, or it needs to give you those things. Like, it's kind of like how welfare works or certain things. It needs to give people those things so they don't revolt against its unqualified state, or so that they're satisfied to overcompensate in this artificial state. So, like, how can I explain it better? Just, society would be like, oh, you need this or you need that. Do you really need it? Or they're trying to bribe you with it to say, okay, you have this, so therefore you won't revolt or you won't point out or invalidate the contrived state. So the objective absolutist would be like that. It doesn't matter. You can give you would use whatever resources you have to expose the contrived state and reflect that. Or you would, no matter what amount of overcompensation you have, you would still see the objective reality of it. And in fact, sometimes that's what it takes. So that's sometimes the fallacy of like, oh, you can't see. You only see that way because, you're only saying that because you're in a position of some, excess means is how I describe it. Like, but maybe that's what it takes, right? There's an expression I have here, like, that's a construct of, or like an alteration of, oh, like you're in a glass tower, right? Something like that. I can't remember, like an ivory tower, but maybe that's the way that you can be objective and see clearly, is because you're up above and you can see everything, like a bird's eye view, instead of being too down and too close to see it clearly, right? You might have the need, right? Like you can't see it clearly because you're too busy with your zero-sum half-mass functionalism, which really isn't an excuse either. It doesn't matter what your state is. You might be forced or pressured by that state, but it's, the way that social contrivance is a tool to control and specify and things like that. But what it actually means is that you have, what it actually means is that you, again, society will try to bribe you. It's like, oh, what would you have done without this or that? It's like, what would you have done? Any of the inherent things that you're capable of doing, that people have been capable of doing for all of human history, you'd be just fine. Society wouldn't be fine because you could easily break the contrivance state or, do something different that it doesn't want you to do. So that's the thing. Like, look at it on that literal basis that is so comical. Oh, you needed this, or you needed that, or oh, you struggled with this, or you struggled with that. But to what end did you need that or struggle with that? Oh, just so that you wouldn't do the things that society doesn't want you to do that you're capable of doing inherently, right? Something that could involve a crime or this or that, or not even, doesn't even have to be that extreme. But whatever it is, like doing something that minimalism, self-actualization, like, oh, those are negative things. Living outside of it, doing something outside of that. So it's like, oh, a person would have been just fine without those things. It's just that, oh, they need them to overcompensate or to convince them and coerce them into tolerating a contrivance state, basically. Right, so it's an interesting trick of it. Like, oh, look how privileged you are to have this or that. But you only require or desire or need that because of the contrivance state that you're in the first place. It's kind of the two are tied together. So one thing I was thinking I could almost do is react to stuff, but if I was going to react to it, like videos or something, I don't necessarily want to play the video, right, where, steal the content that way. It's more like, I don't know, like I could just, tell you the timestamp and react to it that way. And so what happens is that, again, make it inconvenient. So again, unqualified authority, how does it validate itself in a specific contrivance state, every era of human history? How does it do that? Because like, look at yourself that way. You would be indignantly insistent and confident and positive about what you're doing in your lifestyle and the authority that you serve and all that. But everybody throughout human history was like that too. So don't worry about the specifics. Think about the larger process. Oh, so you would have gone along with any other era, any other time, any other circumstance just because you happen to live there, right? It's this ego that's preyed on. You're controlled through your own ego that like, oh, how could I possibly be wrong? So you're tricked into insisting upon something that you think you choose or your own state that you're in. But that state that you're in, how did you get there? Go to the origin point. Oh, you might insist upon it because, again, how could you be wrong and you have cognitive dissonance with your state? The problem is that the way that state was arrived upon was you were born, you didn't choose to be born. You were indoctrinated, you didn't choose to be indoctrinated. You know, until you were a certain age. And now when you can finally think for yourself, now you insist upon the things that you didn't choose. So you're tricked into insisting upon things that you didn't choose as though you did, or as though you desire them, or as though they're absolute. And how do you do that? Because you bypass critical thinking. You don't answer it. You don't answer anything. You bypass it and remove the asking of it by indoctrinating people in youth when they're too young to even think for themselves. And then, once they are old enough to think for themselves, you hold over their head that, oh, the reliance, or try to starve them out, or you even frame everything as anti-false duality, that, oh, they must be against it, or, oh, look, they're rebellious, even though you're restricting them so heavily using unqualified empirical authority that will work on most people because, again, you're indoctrinating them in youth before they're old enough to think for themselves. So just make no mistake, not only is it unqualified empirical authority, it never even attempts to qualify itself outside of a mere pretense. It never even attempts to qualify itself. Rather, it will try to bypass that by, again, getting people when they're young, which is a very dirty process because, again, that could apply to almost anything then. It's arbitrary. And then there's some weird framing that happens, like if you have some, grievance like this against the contrivance state, that, oh, just don't be a part of it, or just don't do this or that. Don't preserve the stimuli acme. That would be the absolutist way. But like you single-handedly as an individual are supposed to overcome eras and centuries and decades of a particular contrivance state, or all this buildup of indoctrination and the resources and the empirical basis. Like you single-handedly you're born in the year 2000, let's say, whatever, right? And now you observe this, and it's like, oh, well, if you don't like it, don't be a part of it, or whatever, or tear it down, or do this or that. But like you are single-handedly as an individual going against thousands of years of human contrivance and psychological processes to control them, and establish authority and preconceived power and all of these different things, and you're just supposed to deal with that yourself. Like you can observe it and see the nature of it, but like how are you supposed to do that? Right, so it kind of doesn't make sense that those things have been established for so long, or even just in the immediate sense, like a collective mass of people have deferred to that authority structure and given them monopoly over means, like through corporations, and given, again, all this unqualified empirical authority over basically every area of life. So now what are you supposed to make of that? It's like, if all this power has been given to them, now you single-handedly can't do much about that. So it's like, let's reverse it. Okay, let's see the credibility I would have if you gave me all that unqualified empirical authority and you gave me all this corporate monopoly over means. Oh, what would happen then? It's like, that's the equivalent of what you're expecting, is just saying, oh, then why can't you just do this? It would take a generation. I have this whole concept in Logical Razor, a generation of absolutists or minimalists to either, again, tear down the structure in some way, or, again, remove the need, sort of starve out the structure in the sense that, okay, don't have kids for a generation, and don't preserve the current state. Just reset. Everybody be a minimalist. Unfortunately, this is the big trap of overextension too, and the stimuli acme. There's too many people to do that. So now you're beholden by overextension. Like, oh, you can't be a minimalist. Everybody can't be a minimalist, even though they technically could. It's just, that's the whole basis of society and overextension, right? There's so many people, so therefore we have to sacrifice inherent things, this and that, right? And overextend and reduce everything to a lowest common denominator. So the fewer people there are, the more free you can be. Oh, there's only 1,000 people in the world. So now, what amount of power could you really have over them? Right? The world is their oyster. You couldn't do anything even if you wanted to. Right? Like, it's different because you have, like, again, everybody for a generation could be a minimalist and starve out the existing corporations and power structure and just equalize and neutralize it. That's what it would take. So it's like, how in one generation are you supposed to overcome and topple centuries of human contrivance and psychological control and indoctrination and, monopolization of means and unqualified empirical authority that's been deferred to in power in every area of life? How are you supposed to do that? Just like that, right? That's the expectation. It's an unfair game. It's like, oh, you are up against all of those things I just mentioned, right, that took centuries to establish and all this different infrastructure, and you're just supposed to come on the scene and do that. And any benefit you have, like, oh, well, you benefited from your parents or this or that to some minor extent, that's somehow, disqualifying. Well, what you're going against has tremendous advantages, so that won't be held against that. But you, even in a literal sense, you could say, oh, well, the pretense of this society is morality and this and that, but, oh, you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for, ancestors slaughtering the natives and enslaving other people and this and that. It's like, so what about that? The same way that you could discredit the individual and say, oh, well, you wouldn't be in this position if your parents didn't feed you from the age of 1 to 5 or didn't give you some zero-sum means, excess, overextend, whatever, right? Well, also, okay, your society wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be in the position you're in the collective contrivance state, if its ancestors didn't slaughter innocent people and enslave people and stuff like that. So, you know what I mean? Like, so you could discredit that then. Oh, you have the privilege of that. And I know sometimes people try to make that argument in a more narrow sense, like, well, for some race-specific thing, but I'm just saying it broadly, like, everything is like that then. Everything is privilege or some disqualifying factor that you benefited from. So, yet you act all self-righteous or indignant and insistent about it, and it's like, I don't know. A lot of these things are things I've discussed in the past, but I do like rehashing it this way. I think my main issue now is the mic quality. That's why I was trying to use that mic, but that was quite a ridiculous moment where, again, I had it like on my lap for a second because I was just waiting for the Starlink to do a thing, and then, it falls over. It was like one you get from Walmart, and it's meant for like iPhone and stuff. And I don't know. I mean, I don't mind getting another one, but let me think about another topic here. This is more fun if there's more like people active and stuff in there, but that'd be one funny thing, because you need 50 subscribers apparently to even live stream, and I had like 52 when I started, and now I have 51. It's probably somebody got bothered by the notification even coming up of me doing that. But the problem is that, what if I fall below 50 now? Will that mean I'm not able to stream anymore? Because again, most of the subscribers on here are not from this format at all. It's from like some of those chess videos, apparently that foot fetish video that's like, psychology expert explains the simple reasons behind foot fetishes, which stuff like that I find dumb too myself. Like sometimes I think, oh, it's so obvious or whatever, like something that's obvious to you might be remarkable to other people, and so it's kind of like, that's what you gotta always understand. Something that you think, oh, this is so obvious, this is so basic, right, that you just take a second nature, to other people that might be profound or amazing, or, a lot of people don't realize their own insight or talent sometimes that way, that it comes so easily to you, or it's so obvious to you. Like, let's rehash that. My most viewed video on this channel, which has about 5K views, which is pretty impressive, and I never would have expected it. It's just, that just shows you how random the thing is. In fact, some of the things that have been my most viewed content are the things not saying I really know one way or another, but not only do I not think that they're going to do well, I even think they're kind of stupid as I'm doing them. Like some of those Danganronpa clips I wasn't even going to upload. I thought they're kind of silly. One of them I would vouch for, the deduction one, is actually pretty good. Where, you know, it's like my greatest deduction from Danganronpa, where I predict a good moment. But no, it's a situation where you... I'm actually testing the stream delay with that undo typing thing for a second, which seems to be about 10-20 seconds. It's fine. But no, what I'm saying is, like, that foot fetish thing, I didn't expect to do anything at all. So, like, some of the reasons I said were, okay, submission has a lot to do with it. And see, that could apply even outside of a sexual domain. It's like, there's like a strong preconceived element to sometimes things like that. Right? Society pushes in your face that, oh, something is attractive. And so even if you're not really into that, it's why people are so insecure about the trans movement to some extent, because you realize how artificial these things are. Like, oh, if men wear dresses, so what's the problem with that if you're not into them? Right? But it shows you some of it is a construct, or like makeup or whatever. Some of it is a construct. Those things aren't really tied to the inherent attraction. Right? So you want, oh, women to have a monopoly over them because society likes to sexualize women. It's like, so it shows you those things have nothing to do with it, and they're artificial, and anybody can do them. And so you understand that, you know, there's a contrivance at place there. So, like, a certain emphasis will be placed on certain things, and I swear, I can't exactly explain what I'm trying to for certain reasons, but pretend you're not interested in men or women, right? But there'll be a strong, if you're a man, you're more likely still to preconceive an attraction to women, either pretend it or imagine it, or, you know, kind of, because that's what society tells you and pressures you, or again, even to the extent that women are sexualized. So you're imagining it, or you're like playing into it, right, just because that's the expectation and that's the performative aspect that's put out. So, again, like the power fantasy of it comes in there. Like, you don't even have to be into anything, right, physically. It's more like, oh, the mental, psychological appeal of bowing down to feet and submission. That has nothing to do necessarily with the particular person or the feet themselves, like how they look or whatever. It could just be the psychological thing of, like, you know, the submission, bowing down, kissing feet like that, or, you know, being used as a human footstool or something. And then some of the other dynamics would be, or I like when I was having one of these discussions in the past, because I would talk about fetishes and stuff somewhat, and people would accuse me. This is a good example of, like, the myopic marginalization concept that I talk about, where it's like, if I've discussed and talked about every concept in human history, how can you define me by any one? Then the next moment I talk about something that's the complete opposite and contrary. So it's like, oh, you're discussing this fetish, and then somebody says, oh, you must have this fetish. Oh, do you have this fetish? And it's like, well, do I have every single other one that I've discussed? Hundreds of them? So I have all of them? Like, you know, you see how stupid it is then to personalize? It's like, you know, because, you know, it's stupid to personalize because of the simple fact that, you know, you could have discussed dozens of them, so does it really matter? Like, okay, you can't have all of them, so, like, what, you're just not allowed to discuss something without being defined by it? So, yeah, there's a submission element, there's the visual element, which you subjectively could find with anything, so that's kind of not really related to feet. Like, oh, you like how they look, so what? There's sort of the voyeuristic element that's kind of good, that's like, they're exposed some of the time, but not all of the time, so it's kind of like, you know, in summertime, and people wearing flip-flops and shoes, and a lot of the rest of the time they're not exposed, so it's kind of like, there's a bit of a mystery, or a bit of a, you know, anticipation, or some, you know, again, like, it feels almost like, okay, you're seeing something rare or sought after a little bit because you only see it some of the time, and just the very act of it being sort of revealing is something powerful too. Like, oh look, they're revealing something that you don't normally see, so that feels like a little open and a little, intimate, even though that seems odd. It's like most of the time, that wouldn't be the case. Like when would somebody be showing their feet normally, right? Like not showing it deliberately, but I mean, like, when would it be exposed normally? It'd be like in a home setting. They're comfortable, they're at home, right? They're barefoot walking around, or they have flip-flops or something on. So it's in a more comfortable, more relaxed kind of environment, right? So that can correspond with some form of arousal, arguably, although I may be reading into it a bit too much there. But again, the whole basic idea of the voyeuristic element, that like they're on display, but you're not supposed to look at them. They're only on display some of the time, some parts of the year. They're also, again, sort of symbol of power, submission to some extent. It feels like something, again, maybe a little sought after because it's, again, not always on display. So like even on a personal level, right, you can imagine this scenario, like somebody you know super well, and you're friends with them or whatever, and then all of a sudden one day, for the first time ever, you see them wearing open-toed shoes, or you see you see that, and it's like, it's not even so much that you would have to be attracted to that itself. It's just the fact that, oh look, now you're seeing something that's more revealing than normal. So it almost does trigger that. It seems silly, but it triggers the same thing of like, oh, you get to see them in a revealing outfit, but instead of in those other areas, it's in the feet. So it's like, it's a little bit silly because, but no, it's the same concept. Like, oh look, they're revealing something. That shows you they're open. That shows you they're, oh, they want the attention. They like the attention. That they're, really showing something off. There's a particular, it's hard to explain it. It's like there is a certain almost boisterous element to it, or like, oh look, I'm showing this, or like, again, the sound of flip-flops being kind of noisy and drawing attention to itself. Again, there's a certain power dynamic, whether people realize it or not, at work there. Again, you can say a lot of people, oh, it's just they're comfortable, that's why they wear them, that's fine. But right, the appeal can still be there, and yeah, I mean, those are all the things I talk about in there. People had some pretty interesting comments too. There's some tie into Neanderthal times maybe, or there's some other, I don't know, there were some other theories in there, but it was just a very surface level discussion, but somehow people really liked it, I guess, which is, again, like, I've made fun of that a couple of times, like, oh, do content on YouTube, they said, or whatever, do content creation, they said, it'll be fun, they said, and then the one that ends up getting the most views is something like that. Like, bro, I don't want that to be my most viewed video at all, but this is what you're defined by. Like, oh, you're that guy who posted that foot fetish video, they got this many views, assuming, let's say it got millions of views compared to everything else or something. It's like, you'll be defined not by what you value yourself, or what you choose, or what you like, or what you prefer, or what you do the most of. You'll be defined by what appeals to people, right? So, oh, let's say my top 10 videos are to do with that, like fetishes or something stupid like that. And then I have hundreds of other videos about other topics like philosophy and things like this. What does that mean? Like, oh, so you'll be defined by those 10 that have to do with fetishes instead of everything else, not because that's what you're prioritizing, that's what you value or do the most of or whatever. It's because that's what other people value. So other people's value defines you, right? Like, that's kind of again, the myopic marginalization. So like, oh, your most viewed videos will be what the audience decides and what they, so it says more about them than it says about you, right? But yet you'll be defined by it in some way. So it's kind of a very telling dynamic there for sure. And then you also have to consider so I mean, this is hardly even absolutist philosophy. I'm just kind of talking about random stuff, but I do find that an interesting concept, right? Like, you know, you put out, okay, let's say I'm an artist and I make 100 movies in my career, and 99 of them, or 95 of them, are obscure and don't make much money and nobody's ever seen them, and then the other 5 are really well known, and they all have to do with the, let's say, you know, adult industry, right? So I made 5 movies in the adult industry, and then I made the 95 just general, you know, other normal movies. So, oh, he's that one adult guy, right? They'll define you by those 5 because those are the ones that are popular for whatever reason. That's what appeals to the masses. But what about those other 95 that you slaved away, and, you know, just by the sheer number of them, that would define you more, maybe the passion you put into them, everything like that. But again, because people reacted to the 5 and those did better, again, they're defining you by their own reaction and what they value themselves, not what you value, not what you put out, not what you did, right? So that is a sad commentary to look at it, because, again, those other 95 are ignored, and now, oh, they focus on that for some lowest common denominator reason, so it's kind of self-fulfilling. It's like they'll define you by what they value and ignore everything else. So is that really a reflection of you, or is it a reflection about them? So my logical razor there is kind of like, what is observed often says more about the observer, or way. Yeah, I guess I didn't phrase it quite like that, but I can say it like, what is observed often says more about the observer than what is observed. So again, it says more about them, that they focus on that, they fixate on that, that defines them, that's their point of fixation. And so, right, because you could do that with anything. You choose to pick out. I have like an analogy in a short story about this, like a godlike being comes down, and it's like that godlike being is able to, the way that people look at him is, everybody looks at him a different way, and so like defines him based on their own needs or ignorance or desires or flaws, right? They project everything onto them, when really that being is beyond all that, doesn't care about that, doesn't need all that, right? But everyone projects something different. So what they're seeing is more a reflection in themselves, because basically the godlike being is very neutral. It doesn't have performative aspects. It's not trying to impress anybody. It's just very almost boring and bland, because that's how a godlike being might be, because it doesn't have any need. It doesn't need to eat. It doesn't need to drink. It doesn't need to prove anything. It doesn't have any incentives. It doesn't have any bias, right? It just is. It's like nature. It just is. And so now it reflects back onto people their own needs or their own desires or their own bias, right? So they'll see that in them, even though it's actually quite a poignant thing. Like, they'll see a reflection of themselves in that, because it's just nothing. It's neutral. You can display this effect psychologically yourself, right? Just be sort of neutral on a blank slate, and people will project onto you something, even if it has nothing to do with you. The most common being the stimuli acme or zero-sum means, like, they'll project something that's not there because you're not doing what they expect normally, right? The incentivized overcompensation that I talk about. So, for example, people are used to being controlled by a process or having incentives. So, like, oh, somebody being really upbeat and social and positive and all this undue emphasis, right? They're used to that, but that's tied to an incentive. So, like, oh, they're trying to overcompensate, they're trying to sell you something, or to try to whatever, right? Because they want something. So when somebody is neutral and doesn't do all that, right? They're not social, they're not putting up performative aspects. Now what happens? Now people would project in a negative way. They're like, oh, this person must only want this or that, right? Even though it's the opposite. You don't want anything, that's why you're neutral, versus the one who's overcompensating, placing emphasis, does want something, that's why they're overcompensating. The one who truly doesn't want anything, right, is neutral, but then it's projected because, again, you're not distracting them or overcompensating, whereas the one who is overcompensating is, again, kind of countering them or making them not think about it. And so, yeah, again, this might make it easier for me to not have to edit stuff. I don't really mind. Or, again, I should maybe try to multi-stream it because I don't want to neglect Twitch or anything, but what I was trying to do is, like, these type of sessions I can do on YouTube, and then those kind of sessions, like actual gameplay or something, I would do on Twitch. But again, I just haven't had time to do as much now. Right, like even some of those long sessions were pretty good, like the Red Dead Thanksgiving special was pretty good, or I almost want to test that. Like, what if I do that straight for a month? Like, not that specifically, but like long sessions, like every day for a month. Not saying it would create a great amount of following, but and I upload them every day. Like, it'd be almost impossible. Like, like some of these big streamers, but they don't upload everything they do, or they have like more advanced setup. Like, let's say you stream 12 hours a day every single day. Then how are you gonna edit that and upload it? Right, too. Like, you won't have enough time. Right, like you're trying to, you won't have enough time because of the simple fact that I don't know, it's like the fact that you, okay, you stream 24 hours, 24/7, but at least then you'd be sleeping or something sometime. But no, it's like, yeah, you stream for 12 hours, then you edit it, then you go to bed and upload it while you're sleeping, and then do it again the next day. Like, it just seems like a crazy schedule. You'd need like a separate computer and internet separate from what you're streaming on to be able to be uploading at all times. Or the one thing I was also thinking about doing is like have like a replay channel where I'm constantly streaming there 24/7, and you need like a special setup for it, like all my old VODs and stuff, or like all my YouTube videos. And it might seem stupid, but it's actually a pretty good thing because I have so many videos that nobody's seen because my channel is kind of obscure. So like I could let that run all the time, right? And it would never catch up because I'm constantly uploading stuff too. It's like I have an infinite amount of content that I could just replay. And it might seem like, oh, that's somehow a bad thing, but I mean, it's my content, and it's, you wouldn't know the difference, right? Like, aside from chat engagement, which at this level of content isn't even that relevant, like, what would it be? It'd be like, it's a situation where you would be watching a full playthrough that arguably would be even better than on stream, because I would edit out the parts that are going to be me going AFK and stuff, so you could just watch the whole thing live. And again, the only thing you won't get is chat engagement, but it's not even really something most people would notice because there's not that many people there anyway. So that is an interesting idea if I just let that run.